and ready to go. So we have a number of meetings to get through today, this being the first year of 2021. And so the first two meetings that we're going to open and close are going to be hearings that are required by law. So I would like to begin by holding the Records Commission hearing for January 12th, 2021. Mrs. Camphouse, please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood?
Present.
Mrs. Cole?
Present.
Ms. Ballard?
Present.
Mrs. Rayber?
Present.
Mrs. Rarica?
Present.
So for this hearing, we've modified our records retention schedule to meet the auditor state and the Ohio Historical Society recommendations. Madam Vice President, were there any comments or concerns in our public email inbox concerning the public records hearing?
There were not.
Thank you. So we can adjourn then.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood?
Yes.
Mrs. Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Ballard?
Yes.
Mrs. Rayber?
Yes.
Mrs. Rarica?
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. With that, we are adjourned from the Records Commission hearing. Next, we're going to move to the tax budget hearing for January 12th, 2021. Mrs. Camphouse, please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood?
Present.
Mrs. Cole?
Present.
Ms. Ballard?
Present.
Mrs. Rayber?
Present.
Mrs. Rarica?
Present.
This is the tax budget hearing. The tax budget is a document that has no purpose internally for the district, but instead provides documentation so that the Hamilton County Auditor's Office can comply with their statutory obligations of oversight of our office. Madam Vice President, were there any comments or concern in our public email inbox concerning the tax budget hearing?
No, there were not.
Again, we can adjourn.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Mrs. Camphouse, please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood?
Yes.
Mrs. Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Ballard?
Yes.
Mrs. Rayber?
Yes.
And Mrs. Rarica?
Yes.
All right. The third meeting on our agenda is our organizational meeting for the year. We have to hold one of these every January at the first meeting in order to set ourselves up for the entire calendar year. So I would like to call this meeting to order. And I would like to ask everyone to please stand or participate in saying the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Mrs. Camphouse, please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood?
Present.
Mrs. Cole?
Present.
Mrs. Rayburn?
Present.
Ms. Ballard?
Present.
And Mrs. Rarica?
Present.
All right, item 3 of our agenda for the organizational meeting is the election of the Board of Education president. The Board of Education is to elect a president. The president pro tem shall continue to preside over this meeting at the time. Any member of the Board of Education may nominate someone for office. It should be noted that nominations in this do not require a second. If more than one person is nominated for each position, the treasurer shall publicly call the roll of the board and ask members to vote for their choice. Ohio law requires that the majority vote of all members of the Board of Education to elect an officer. With that being said, I would like to ask for nominations for board president.
I would like to nominate Mr. Atwood.
Are there any other nominations for board president? Mrs. Camphouse, please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Cole,
Yes.
Mrs. Rayburn,
Yes.
Miss Ballard,
Yes.
Mrs. Raritan.
Yes.
All right. With that, we have a board president for the 2021 year. Next item on our agenda is an election of our vice president. The same thing applies. The Board of Education is to elect a vice president. Any member of the Board of Education may nominate someone for office. It should be noted that nominations do not require a second. If more than one person is nominated for each position, the treasurer shall publicly call the roll of the board and ask the members to vote their choice. Ohio law requires that majority vote of all members of the board to elect an officer. At this time, I would like to ask for nominations for vice president of the board.
I'll nominate Amber Ballard.
Are there any other nominations for vice president? Mrs. Camphouse, please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Cole,
Yes.
Mrs. Rayburn,
Yes.
Miss Ballard.
Yes.
Mrs. Raritan.
Yes.
With that vote, we now have our officers for the 2021 year. Now, in years past, we have done the oath of office. Are we doing that now, or are we going to do that?
I can do that now, and then I can just have the document signed if you stop by the office, or I can even put them in the U.S. mail.
Okay. All right. So let's begin with board president.
Okay, I'm going to read this statement to you, Mr. President, and if you answer, if you agree, you answer, I do. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as President of the Board of Education of the Norwood City School District, Hamilton County, Ohio, to the best of your ability and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified?
I do.
Thank you, Mr. President.
We'll move on to the vice president oath of office.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that you will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and that you will faithfully and impartially discharge your duties as Vice President of the Board of Education of the Norwood City School District, Hamilton County, Ohio, to the best of your ability and in accordance with the laws now in effect and hereafter to be enacted during your continuance in said office and until your successor is elected and qualified?
I will.
Thank you, Madam Vice President.
All right. With that concluded, we'll move on to the next item in our agenda, and that is the committee appointments and chairpersons. And so as board president, there are 4 standing committees that we typically have for every meeting to give out reports. Those are the Finance Committee, the Education Committee, the Buildings and Grounds Committee, and the Policy Committee. I would like to appoint for the Finance Committee Amber Ballard as the chairperson and Alice Rarica as the vice chair.
Thank you, Mr. President. I accept that nomination.
You're welcome. For the Education Committee, I would like to appoint board member Sally Raber as the chairperson and appoint myself as the vice chair.
Thank you.
You're welcome. For the Building and Grounds Committee, I would like to appoint board member Debbie Cole as the chairperson and Amber Ballard as the vice chair.
Okay, thank you.
And then for the Policy Committee, I would like to appoint Board Member Alice Rarica as the chairperson, and myself as the vice chair.
Thanks.
Now, with this, and I'm keeping the theme that I started with last year, myself is not, I've not appointed myself as a chair of any one of the standing committees. So I'm trying to spread the responsibility of our work as a board amongst all the members and trying to do so in the most equal way possible. If any of the board members have an issue or really want to be on another committee, please let me know and we can make those adjustments.
Are you going to do a legislative?
Yeah, that's later in the agenda though. So hearing no current objections, we'll move on to item number 6 in our agenda, and that is establishing the time, date, and location of our school board meetings. And so in the agenda, you can see that we have tentatively listed all of the committee and regular meetings for the entire calendar year of 2021. The big change for this is that moving forward in 2021, all board and committee meeting times will begin at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So in years past, the committee meetings have always been at 5:30 and the board meetings at 6, and we're just going to make that 6 across the board for all of the meetings. Can I ask for a motion to approve?
All motion?
I'll second that.
Mrs. Camphouse, please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Cole,
Yes.
Mrs. Rayber,
Yes.
Ms. Ballard,
Yes.
Mrs. Rarica.
Yes.
All right, with that, our meeting schedule has been established. Again, like what happens every year, there'll be some times where things need to be moved for one reason or another. But that is our set meeting schedule as of now. Item number 7 on our agenda is the board service fund and proper public purpose appropriations. So to align with board policy BHD, the board sets appropriation for the board service fund not to exceed $20,000 for the calendar year 2021 from the general fund. And to also align with policy BHD, the board sets appropriations for the proper public purpose to not exceed $20,000 for the calendar year 2021 from the general fund. I will say that these appropriations that we're making now, this is the money that we'll use for trainings if we're going to do a retreat in the summer, things of that nature. I mean, this is what this money is there for, and we're appropriating it now at the beginning of the year. Do I have a motion to accept these appropriations?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Any discussion about these appropriations?
I just want to clarify, Mr. President, that any funds that we don't use within that amount can return to the general fund for fiscal year 20 to 22. Correct?
Yes, that's how all of our appropriations work. That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other discussion? Mrs. Camphouse, please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Cole,
Yes.
Mrs. Rayber,
Yes.
Ms. Ballard,
Yes.
Mrs. Rarica.
Yes.
All right. With that vote passing by unanimous consent, we have appropriated the money for our board service fund and proper public purpose. Next item on our agenda is the bonds for the president, superintendent, and treasurer. The handling of funds and signing of fiscal certificates are requirements in varying degrees of the board president, superintendent, and treasurer. The signing of fiscal certificates states that sufficient funds are available to operate a school district. statute recommends that the president, superintendent, and treasurer have a bond and or employee dishonesty coverage covering them from any liability, and this amount be established for at least $20,000. Currently, the treasurer has a $200,000 bond, and the superintendent and board president are covered by employee dishonesty coverage in the amount of $25,000 each. That coincides with each person's term of office. I'd like to make a motion that we set those same bond amounts for the 2021 year for
I'll
those
second.
three individuals.
I'll move to accept those.
Do I have a second?
Yeah, I said that earlier. Sorry.
Oh, I didn't hear you. I'm sorry. Okay. Any discussion about setting bond amounts? Mrs. Camphouse, please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Cole,
Yes.
Mrs. Raber,
Yes.
Miss Ballard,
Yes.
Mrs. Rarica.
Yes.
All right. With that passing unanimously, we have set the bond amounts for the president, superintendent, and treasurer. Item number 9 on our agenda is authorization of the treasurer. There are a number of sub-items here, and I'd like to hand this over to Mrs. Camphouse.
Thank you, Mr. President. 9.01, advance taxes from the county auditor. The board is giving me the authority to request taxes as they come in, just to help with cash flow issues. 9.02, the annual tax budget and updated financial forecast. We will approve that as was displayed in the tax budget hearing. 9.03, records retention. Again, we will approve the records retention schedule that was displayed in the public records hearing before our meeting tonight. 9.04, approval of OSBA's annual membership and dues. 9.05, authorize the treasurer to set appropriations. That is before the board approves them at each board meeting. 9.06, authorize the treasurer to advance or transfer funds before the board authorization at the board meeting. 9.07, authorize the treasurer to invest in active or interim funds. 9.08, authorize the treasurer to pay bills following Norwood's purchasing requirements. 9.09, waive requirements to calculate a capital improvement reserve. We do not need a capital improvement reserve since we have a permanent improvement fund. 9.10, accept the recommendations of the Norwood's Record Commission, again, to shred old documents as presented during the public records meeting or hearing. And that is all the authorities that you're giving me tonight.
I'd like to make a motion that we approve items 9.01 through 9.10 as presented to us in our agenda.
I'll second.
Any discussion on these items? Mrs. Camphouse, please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Cole,
Yes.
Mrs. Raber,
Yes.
Miss Ballard,
Yes.
and Mrs. Rarica.
Yes.
All right. Item number 10 on our agenda is the authorization for the superintendent. And for this item, we are giving the superintendent shall appoint all employees and report such action to the Board of Education at the next regular Board of Education meeting. So we're giving the superintendent the authority to hire. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the authorization of the superintendent.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Camphouse, please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Cole,
Yes.
Mrs. Raber,
Yes.
Miss Ballard,
Yes.
Mrs. Rarica.
Yes.
All right. With that passing unanimously, we've approved the superintendent the ability to be able to hire as needed for the 2021 year. Item number 11 of our agenda is the appointment of board representatives. And so there are a number of different other avenues where we participate, one being the Great Oaks, two being the Norwood Community Television Board, three being a legislative liaison to OSBA, four being Avenues for Success, five being treasurer to the Tax Incentive Review Council, and six being the public records liaison. As board president, I'm going to appoint some people to those roles. Item number 5, treasurer to the Tax Incentive Review Council, is going to be Julie Camphouse, our treasurer. Item number 6, the public records liaison, is going to be Heather Cole, an employee of the district. Item number 1, our board vice president, Amber Ballard, is contracted to be our representative for Great Oaks. And so she will continue in that role. Item number 2, the Norwood Community Television Board, I would like to appoint board member Debbie Cole to that position. For our OSBA legislative liaison, I would like to appoint board member Sally Raber. And for our Avenues for Success member, I would like to appoint board member Alice Rarica. I'd like to make a motion that we accept these appointments.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Camphouse, please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Cole,
Yes.
Mrs. Raber,
Yes.
Miss Ballard,
Yes.
Mrs. Rarican.
Yes.
All right, with that passing, we have our board representatives placed. Item number 12 in our agenda is adjournment from the organizational meeting. May I have a motion to adjourn?
A motion.
I'll second.
Mrs. Camphouse, please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Cole,
Yes.
Mrs. Raber,
Yes.
Miss Ballard,
Yes.
Mrs. Rarican.
Yes.
All right. At 5:53, we are adjourned from the organizational meeting. And now I would like to greet everybody for our committee meeting for January 12th, 2021. So this is our regular committee meeting, and I would like to ask Mrs. Camphouse to please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood,
Present.
Mrs. Cole,
Present.
Miss Ballard,
Present.
Mrs. Raber,
Present.
Mrs. Rarican.
Present.
And following our norms, I would like to ask everyone to please participate in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
nation,
under
under
God,
God,
indivisible, with
liberty
and
and
justice
justice
for
for
all.
all. All right, item number 3 in our committee meeting is a presentation, and it looks like we have an update about Norwood High School.
Hello, I am going to take the lead on this. So
Okay.
I just wanted first to thank everyone for inviting us here. You know that every year, each building in the district does give an update to the Board of Education. January seemed very appropriate for the high school because in your board documentation, you do have a copy of our program of studies for your consideration. So we thought it would be appropriate. Most of the document does remain consistent from prior years. We do have some additions to it, but we thought something that is timely and important for everyone to review is our updated Ohio graduation requirements that are coming down from the Ohio Department of Education. And those are listed within the document. When you get a chance, it's on page 4 on the left-hand side. So Mr. Robinson's going to help me out. We created a little PowerPoint for you. He is going to show, it is a brief synopsis of the graduation requirements as they are laid out, and kind of informational on what we're doing in our school district and in our high school to prepare our students for graduation. Okay, Mr. Robinson, you can.
All right, so everybody can see my screen all right? They can see the presentation?
Mhm.
Yes, I can.
All right, so what we wanted to focus on is the ever-changing graduation requirements. In the past 2 years, the state has rolled out new requirements for the classes that we have right now. So when we look at these, currently the class of 21 and 22, so our juniors and seniors, actually have different requirement options that they can utilize than that of the freshmen and sophomores. So originally, the requirements were that you would earn your 20 credits, and then you would earn at least 18 points on your 7 end of course exams. Last year, they made an update to this. And so beginning with the freshman class, so the class, or currently sophomore class, the class of 23, there are new requirements that are less focused on the end of course exams. So the important thing to note is that the class of 21 and 22 can utilize either option, the one that they started with in the high school, or they can choose the option if it's a better fit that we'll go over here that the freshmen and sophomores are using. So there's 3 main areas to focus on. Everything stayed the same credit wise. It's still, you earn a minimum of 20 credits in specified subject areas and take your state required test. The change comes in the testing area. The class of 21 and 22, like I said, they would earn 18 points. Where they've changed it is that the class of 23 and beyond are focusing on English 2 and Algebra 1 end of course exams. So they need to earn a competency score on those tests. If they don't, there are alternative options for them. Let me see here, my screen is, there we go. There are alternative options for that group. So they can earn college credit plus credits. They can do a career-focused pathway, or they can enlist in the military if you do not earn your testing requirements. One other thing that they've added for this, for the class of 23 and beyond, is they want to see how you demonstrate your readiness. So these students will do this by earning what they're calling seals. You have to have a state seal. So if you look here on the B point, each one is listed out. If there's a OH after it, that is a state seal. The local seals are what we actually had approved earlier this year. We created those ones. So students will earn at least 2. And again, one of those has to be a state seal. So this can be anything. These are very simple to earn. But what it does is just show how the student is involved, and kind of shows where their focus was during their high school career, and just that they were a well-rounded academic career.
It also, those seals can be used, and often are, and they're already being given out to our current senior class. They will be able to earn these seals. So things, when they are involved in, for example, student government, or the Hope Squad, or those kind of things that they're already participating in, that they count. So they will earn, it is a seal. It is a gold application that goes on their diploma. They can use it on resumes, college applications, anything in the future. It is something that carries with them, an endorsement that goes with them wherever they go. It is on and attached to their transcript as well.
Yeah. So what are we doing to get ahead? So credits, we've expanded our course offerings, which is, kind of what you guys will review in our packet there. But we're trying to target areas where we're seeing interest and add as, one focus we've added is AP courses, trying to expand our AP offerings as well. Another one is we're creating electives that offer remediation and support, and then also touch on work-based learning. So we can target those areas, and our students who are maybe struggling with that Algebra 1 EOC or ELA 2 EOC, we can help those weak areas. The other area is student service partnership and guidance. We're working on different areas where we know that, students may be struggling. One example is Hope Squad and how we partner with guidance and our guidance department and how they help students there. The other area, kind of like I said with testing, we're trying to touch on all the areas of weakness for students, Algebra 1, ELA 2, but also prepare students. We're focusing on our students who are taking the ACT and kind of offering ACT prep courses and trying to prepare them for what's coming. So we will be adding courses for that next year for both in ELA areas and in math areas. The other large part is just expanding the curriculum and professional development for teachers. We want to have teachers constantly be using that ACT format as much as they can, using ACT questions as much as they can. So when students do get to that test, that's not a new style that they're seeing. So the other part is readiness demonstration. So we are trying to gauge student interest and see where they are with SEAL achievement. Like we said, it's very simple. It's things they're already doing. For example, you can earn your biology SEAL if you earn a competency score on your biology test. If you're in an extracurricular, you can earn an extracurricular SEAL. If you're in a fine arts, you earn a fine arts SEAL. So it's a lot of things our students are doing already. We have students really excited. We met with seniors last week, and they're already asking how can we know what SEALs we've earned through our 4 years. So it's something we're working on. We're trying to partnership with Avenues for Success to boost involvement in this, and also, service groups, and then, continue development of student leadership groups. We have Student Council, Hope Squad, National Honor Society, Ignite, Mentors, and Captain's Council. That's a lot of opportunity for students to earn service hours because, again, there's a service SEAL. So, but the biggest thing is, we got to collaborate with student services to meet these student needs. So we're focusing on that. And then lastly, work-based learning. That's something we talked about last year, and we're continuing this year, trying to find ways we can prepare students while they're at Norwood High School. They can leave here with work training and having an idea of what they want to do after high school, if that is in college. So if it is college, then they'll have an idea of what they want to study. But either way, we want them to not just leave here with a diploma. The idea is that they are going to leave here with a plan, which brings me to my next point. So, but real quick, here's an example of a student SEAL. So if a student participates in band, like I said, they're proficient in biology EOC and completed a 12-point industry credential, which is something that they would do kind of along the industry credential is along the lines of work-based learning. They would have earned their fine arts SEAL. They would have earned a college readiness SEAL. And then lastly, they would have earned an industry credential SEAL. So the industry credential SEAL allows for the district also to receive credit for prepared for success on the state report card, which is an area of focus for us. You get credit if your students receive a competency score on the ACT. And for those who are not able to, we can have them use this credential to also receive credit for that. So that's, like I said, a major area of focus. But to my point on the previous slide, we want students to have a plan. Starting their freshman year, we want them to start thinking about, where is this path going to take them? Where will they be after Norwood? So our guidance department sat down and came up with a document, and I'll share it here with you in a minute. But the idea is that they will meet and create goals and kind of put together a plan. Here's the document. And what it does is it allows the students to see the courses they will take for each subject, depending on their ability. There's all different paths that they can take, but they can see what they need to do, what they need to complete, the 20 credits, the cores, the electives. And then they can also have the conversation. You need to have a competency score for Algebra 1 and English 2. These are two very important tests. You'll take this your freshman and sophomore year. And so students have an idea of what they're up against.
Tom, the example didn't pop up on our screen.
You cannot see the PDF?
No.
Okay, let me fix that.
You may have to take down the
I need to change what I'm sharing here. Hold on one sec.
So the other thing we didn't mention here is with the seals as well, it directly does correlate with our state report card and those things that go along too, especially with our Prepare for Success piece that we have. And that Prepare for Success piece judges based on our AP enrollment. It also goes based on our CCP. And then it also implements that piece on the industry credential. So that's why, you're going to see a big emphasis on those aspects here as we continue to strive for, preparing our students and improving where we are as a district.
All right, there you go. Everybody can see that now?
Yes.
We do not want to shut down my computer, though. Postpone that. All right, so the document is here. So like I said, it gives them an idea of what they are going to be going. The guidance counselor can have a conversation about what maths they'll need, what sciences they'll need through the 4 years, what electives they can focus on. And then they'll see their Algebra 1 and English 2 scores here as they have these meetings throughout their career. If they are not meeting that competency score for those two tests, they can kind of discuss, you'll need to complete some of these in this area here, a proficient score on a web exam, a 12-point credential, a pre-apprentice program, work-based learning to fill that requirement for testing. So a major focus for us is this 12-point credential program. We have a lot of students taking that. And like we said, that helps our state report card there. Work key score, Ohio means job score. These are all different ways we can fulfill that testing requirement. So the idea is just that they can also keep track of their seals here. So like I said, the idea is just that they are creating a pathway, they're creating goals, and they're having those discussions very early. We want to have these discussions in the 9th grade. So students are going through this career with a purpose and a focus on being successful after the high school. So.
Thank you, Mr. Robinson.
Yes.
Does anyone have any specific questions that we might be able to address tonight?
I do.
Yeah, I do as well.
So there's a couple of things. I went over this yesterday in person with Miss Chesson, so I do have a paper copy in front of me. I was able to snag and kind of go through piece by piece. Before I forget, the paper that he just had up also will tie in well to this. For the different pathways that are listed, I'm looking specifically at word choice. As an interpreter, this is a big part of my job, and words have a lot of power. When we say workforce, the first thing a high school student is going to think is, I'm going to McDonald's, or I'm going into retail, or I'm in a low paying position. What I don't see on that list, vocational training. What I don't see is technical field. What I don't see is making it sound like it matters. So I think that that's something that we need to change, because a lot of stigma around vocational education, we've been trying to fight really hard over the last couple of decades, has been the challenge that, well, you're not on a college pathway, so you're not smart enough for that pathway, or you're not qualified for that pathway, so we're going to send you over to this pathway. And these kids are graduating with credentials out the wazoo. They're graduating debt-free. They're entering a workforce with sometimes $20 to $40 an hour paying jobs immediately after graduation. 95% of our kids the last 2 years already had jobs or job offers on the table the day they graduated. So when I look at a paper like this and I see things like workforce instead of vocational education or technical training, then I feel that we're doing a disservice to a large portion of our community that may not choose a college pathway. And we have a lot of people here who are really great, skilled workers. And we have a lot of fields in high demand that really need our students. The pages in the book, page 10, 11, 12.
So I'm going to interrupt just briefly.
Okay.
We did, after your discussion, we did some updates. So if you pull the document that's online, you may notice the changes.
Okay. Let's see. Under 4.01.
And Ms. Chesson, you may have to chime in with updates.
Sure. We did alter the sequence, the naming of the sequence as a career college preparatory sequence.
Okay.
On page 10, that's what we had talked about yesterday. And then there was a removal of the words college prep next to courses that are available that are part of a career and college preparatory sequence.
Or
and
we can call it
on page 10.
You know, but I think that it's crucial to a student who's looking at this book, and if they only see college on every other page, they're going to be disheartened, and they're not going to know that that's an option to them. Even if they have a 26-minute meeting with a counselor, it still can become a little daunting when they just keep seeing the word college in their face, and they might not feel that that's their pathway, or they may at first, and then may discover that later that that's not their pathway. I just want them to see themselves in this book. When they start looking for courses, I want them to know that there are options for them, no matter what role in education they want to take. And then the other one was, of course, the parent-student responsibility calendar. None of the dates for, our sophomore visit to the Oaks or our deadlines for signing up and choosing classes through the Oaks are on that list. Everything for ACT, PSAT, signing up for FAFSA, everything that's college related is on that. But none of the responsibility for signing up for vocational training falls on this calendar. So this could get
we updated that.
Yeah, thank you for
updated that in your chart. Yes.
Another piece of information that I found out on page 9 that I didn't mention yesterday. The Great Oaks system has also been partnering recently with more colleges to offer College Credit Plus. So I know that it says that we have relationships with 2-year colleges and things like that, but we do offer College Credit Plus courses in addition to their core work. So we are doing more to encourage the pathway from vocational training directly into college. And that was the only update I had for that.
All right. I do have a couple of questions. And so this is outside of the realm of the Great Oaks, but for like the industry or workplace credentials outside of the Great Oaks, who are we working with or partnered with, and what types of businesses are because you have to have like the 12-point plan in place. So how does that work?
So, Mr. Robinson, do you want to talk with that? Because you've worked mostly.
So we are in the very early stages of creating relationships with businesses. We've been working on getting our pre-apprenticeship program up and going. So that part, the relationships aren't there yet. The 12-point credential is a credentialing process that students can earn by assessments. There's state tests that they have to take to earn points. So one we're focusing on a lot is one through FEMA. It's a national incident management system. That's one test that students can take, and then they would earn 10 points for passing these tests. Then another one is they earn a point for being CPR certified. Another one is by completing Stop the Bleed assessment, they would earn a point. So it's not necessarily, when you think of 12-point credential, industry credential, it's not so much that it's with a business. It's more that they're just trying to have students become more well-rounded in different areas that they might encounter after high school.
No, that's fair enough. The other question that I have for the high school team, and possibly Mrs. Chesson, is have we modeled how the industry credential will change the prepared for success category for the state test? So have we done the work to say, hey, if we get this number of kids to do this, how will this change this category for us?
Go ahead, Ms. Chesson. We're all biting at the bit to say yes.
Well, that's good news, right? So you should be able to share the good news. But yes, we have. We've looked at the class. We've looked at the students who've already met the requirements to have that point, and then how many students we will impact through a new opportunity, and then what that will do to impact that particular criteria. So remember that it's always in the rears, and it's always 2 years worth of data behind. Mm-hmm. So it's a 2-year process moving forward, but we felt really good about that conversation and talking through each individual student about they're good in this area. This is where we can support their work so that they can, their work and their effort can be represented in a positive way on that particular area. So we were pleased with our conversation. And now Tina, Mrs. Akers, Mr. Robinson, and Mr. Lawson are doing the work of meeting with students individually along with their counselors to make that happen. So they're doing the hard work and actually the wonderful work of working with students to make that happen.
Right. But have we established a goal of, because we know where we are right now.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? So what is our goal to move that category?
Mr. Lawson, we'll talk about those numbers.
Yeah. So, and I've crunched numbers using the formula that from ODE.
Yeah.
And if we have our kids graduate this year that need the credential as part of the graduation process, it would bring us right to the D range. For the Prepared for Success Honor State Report Card. If we increase our numbers to approximately 30 more kids get the industry credential itself, that will raise us to the C range, approximately. That's depending on graduation class, number of 4-year and 5-year graduations as well. So that's where we are looking at. So far, we have a number of students that have gotten the ACT remediation free, which they don't necessarily need the industry credential. We also have our students that are getting the honors diploma. They don't need the industry credential, but everybody else, we would be looking at those students to potentially get it, and that's what's going to drive us up.
Right.
So those were the numbers that I've crunched. Those are rough numbers at this point. And like I said, right now, if we didn't change anything, we would still be in that F range.
Right. So in years past, the only thing that counted for us was ACT remediation free or honors diplomas, right? So this is a big deal. So 30 kids isn't a whole lot of kids, right?
So here's what we're finding. So this year, this plan is all coming together, kind of quickly. There was not, we just kind of found this out. So we're meeting with seniors and targeting those students who were not hitting that ACT score. And we're encouraging them to trying to put a plan together for them to take these credentials during their senior seminar. We sent a letter home to these senior parents. I think today we sent some home and last week. So we're targeting smaller numbers this year, but the plan moving forward next year is to evaluate those students who are projected to hit that competency score on the ACT. And if they are not, we will place them in a class where they will be able to focus on, it could be the one I mentioned earlier, it's NIMS, the incident management system, or it could be something else that interests them. But they will have a semester class we will call career exploration. And the goal there is
prepare for success. Sorry, I'm going to interrupt. Prepare for success.
Right. Sorry, we had a lot of names picked out. Sorry. Prepare for success. So the idea is if you're not hitting that ACT score, you will have completed this 12-point credential. And moving forward after this year, 100% will be the goal. Every student in the building.
Okay. Fair enough. I'm good. Anybody else have any questions for the team?
Yeah, thank you, Christina, for getting those changes in there so quickly. I really appreciate it.
Of course.
And I just want to thank my team for not only being here, but being very supportive. And like you said, that this process is very complicated and it's ever changing. So thanks to Tom Robinson, Eric Lawson, Haley Harris, and Tom Munchin for all their support in making sure that this is a smooth, that we are doing the very best for all of our kids.
Well, I'd like to thank the high school team, so Mrs. Akers, Mr. Lawson, Mr. Robinson, for your presentation and your willingness to answer our questions. It's very well done, and I greatly appreciate it. And I appreciate all the hard work that you guys do.
Thank you.
With that, we're going to move on our agenda to item number 4, which is the Education Committee. And I'd like to hand this over to board member Mrs. Werka, who's on mute.
I was on mute, but I was just getting back to my agenda after looking at my PDF of the course classes, which here is like, oh, I've got 2 million badges open. All right, so we have our program of studies, which you just saw, and that's what's in our education committee tonight. Amber and I were able to speak with Christina Chesson yesterday and go over the whole thing. We were impressed with a lot and offered a few of those changes, which she very quickly made happen. Super great. And since I don't have a high school student yet, but I have a junior high student, so these were very interesting to me. There were so many classes that we're offering that I was just like, wow, what? We have that. This is amazing. And one thing Amber and I were talking about with Christina was we only have Spanish. And if we were to have interest to choose another, maybe ASL. But that's just talking ideas.
I know I'm a little biased, but it is
Right.
relevant.
Well, Miss Chesson was telling us we had French, but it lost interest. So it would have to be something that had a lot of interest, and ASL could have that. We had a really great discussion. It was so enlightening and interesting and educational, especially for me having a junior high kid, because this is in my near future. To see all that and see how it works and these new SEAL things. I was like, what? They're like Girl Scout badges. I'm totally into this. So yeah, that was it. And so I guess we'll approve it at the meeting.
All right. Back in the day, in the mid 90s or early 90s, when I was in high school here at Norwood, we had 4 languages. So we had Spanish, French, German, and Latin, or was all taught back in those days.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. I know that it's dwindled, and I know that it's a matter of cost. And I understand that it's not necessarily the most community relevant. Spanish definitely is, but I also think that many schools are picking up ASL because there's a good portion of our community, especially IEP learners, benefit from sign language in addition to our deaf community. And it's a very viable career path right now for interpreters. And I know as an interpreter, we need more. So I hope that maybe we can at least offer 2 languages that would positively impact our community.
And I know I wouldn't like us to forget about Latin, even though I didn't mention it yesterday, but my husband still uses his Latin that he learned in high school. So I'm like, gosh, I feel like I missed out. I didn't have Latin.
You know, if we have anybody going into a science major, Latin is definitely very helpful. All right. With no other discussion, we're going to move on the agenda. Item number 5 is personnel, and I'd like to turn this over to Superintendent Ronan.
Thank you, President Atwood. All right, under employment, item number 1, district employees working facilities request up to $100. That really means our plant operators or our maintenance individual who would have to work after hours after we rent out our facility, that we could pay them for the hour or 2 that they spend doing that. And we would certainly take it out of the rental income we get from renting out the facility. Number 2 is band, appointing Kevin Lockwood, our jazz band director. And I'm going to jump down to number 4, avenues for success. We have Melissa O'Connor and Katie Ostendorf as club advisors. Now, I would like to invite our AD, Alex Hines, to talk about all the coaches we are hiring for spring sports. And also, we've received several facilities requests that I just want to make sure that the board is aware of that are coming up soon. So, Alex, are you on?
Yes, thank you. For athletics, number 3, Reed Faraday for girls high school track. And these are all for the spring as well. Sean Weisgerber, the middle school girls track coach. And then below that in number 5, Steve Bosch, varsity baseball. Tracy Wharf, varsity softball. Patrick Mattingly, varsity softball assistant. Tanya Woodruff, reserve softball. Hannah Woodruff, reserve softball volunteer. Reagan Rains, middle school softball assistant. Adam Reynolds, middle school boys track. And Chris Couch, varsity boys track assistant.
And I believe that concludes the employment. But Alex, could you talk a little bit about our facilities requests?
Sure. So we received 2, both from the same person. And they are for St. Xavier and high school, as well as the Mavericks, which is a girls water polo team. They are requesting to use our pool. I believe that he said their St. X pool is under construction. So they are looking for somewhere to rent from March until May. And that is after our swim season, so it would not affect anything on our end. Obviously, if we do have anything scheduled with the school, that obviously will take the precedent. But St. X, the boys team, would like to use it for 5 days a week from 4 to 6. And then the Mavericks, which is the girls team that's affiliated with them, they are requesting to use it for 2 days a week. And that's the info I have on that right now.
Water polo seems to be an up-and-coming sport in the state of Ohio.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, and St. X is like a perennial state finalist every year. Between them and then there's that school up in Columbus. One of the parochial schools up there, St. Charles. So. All right, no other discussion about employment. We'll move on. Item number 6 on our agenda is the policy committee report. And I'd like to turn this over to board member Mrs. Cole.
All right. Thank you, Mr. President. So we have the second reading of the policies that were introduced in December. So we have BDC. This refers to executive sessions This is a wording change to go into more detail about why we go into executive session, and it also reminds us that the discussions are confidential and should remain confidential. Policy DH, this deals with bonded employees and officers. We will provide appropriate bonding or insurance for employees collecting money on behalf of the district. It also adds a cross-reference. DJB, this is about cash change accounts. Staff may not make purchases from cash change accounts, and rules for depositing the return of cash change balances have changed. There's also a cross-reference added to this one. DJF, regarding purchasing procedures, all purchases require a purchase order, and then we have a regulation that goes along with that. DM, the deposit of public funds. This is how the treasurer handles cash. There are new guidelines combined with old guidelines, and this keeps us compliant with state auditors' guidelines. Policy EDE, this is computer online services, states if we need to amend policies or regulations, we can. We just need to notify the users. And it also states that policies are the same regardless of if the device is personal property or property of the school. And then we have a regulation that goes along with that, as well as EDE/-E, and this is the computer network agreement form that goes along with policy EDE. And that's everything for the second reading.
All right. Is there any discussion from the first reading to the second reading that we need to have? Nope. Silence is consent. So we'll have the second reading and the adoption of these policy changes at the board meeting next week. And then we'll move on to item number 7, which is the Buildings and Grounds Committee. I know originally there was nothing on the agenda for this, but we just learned in the employment section that it does look like St. X wants to rent out our pool. Do we need to have any further discussion on this item under this section? Vice President Ballard?
I think I'm okay with it to be added to next week's agenda for us to vote.
Okay. Any other discussion, thoughts? Nope. I think we'll go ahead and put it on the agenda for a vote next week. Moving on to item number 8 in our committee agenda. This is the Finance Committee, and I'd like to turn this over to Mrs. Campos.
Thank you, Mr. President. The CFO report is attached for your review and approval next week, as well as the other typical financial reports. In my CFO report, you will see that July to December, half of our fiscal year, we are very close to estimates in our November forecast for the general fund. Our year-to-date revenues are only $140,000 more than expected, and $100,000 of that is due to timing. Expenditures are running about $10,000 more than expected, which is extremely close to estimated for a $30 million budget. Also in my CFO report, the last page details Hamilton County District's per pupil spending for fiscal year 19, which is from 2 years ago. I hope to have fiscal year 20 per pupil spending very soon for comparison. However, in this chart, you will see that our expenditures broken out on a per student basis are still very high. In fact, we are third highest in the county, just below Indian Hill and CPS. I expect our fiscal 20 report to show us somewhat lower, in the current year's report, fiscal year 21, to be even lower as we continue to cut our expenses. In my opinion, we should be upper mid-range of the county's totals, considering our parents' poverty levels and our commercial real estate revenues. Also attached to tonight's agenda are change order listings. These will be updated for next week's meeting. We have had some larger change orders for Norwood View Elementary's renovation. Currently, we stand at $186,000 in total change orders, and our budget for change orders is $275,000 for View. Since we are at the stage in the project where most demolition is finished, we should not have too many large change orders remaining. Some of our largest approved change orders were ductwork coordination issues due to a lack of existing blueprints at View. Some of those coordination issues, some of the changes, some of the problems we anticipated because of the lack of blueprints were a cracked beam, some crumbling masonry, some further abatement, and fixes to other issues to maintain our fire rating. These issues were not in the scope of work, as these issues were hidden in the ceiling and not discovered until after demolition. The things that I just mentioned totaled $70,000. The cafe serving line has been improved by removing a large chase that was no longer needed to the HVAC changes. That totaled $14,500. And of course, just removing the chase wasn't the expensive parts. Replacing the flooring, patching the plaster, fixing the ceiling, that all adds up. We added speakers and other technology items to the project for a couple of classrooms, and that totaled $25,000. So just those three issues took us to over $100,000 of the $186,000 that we saw. On our agenda, 8.02, our appropriation resolution for the current month. 8.03, a new account. I'm very happy to report that the Hamilton County Commissioners have shared their CARES funding with public schools in the county. Norwood received $93,250 to reimburse the district for PPE and other COVID-related purchases. This funding will help the forecast's bottom line. We are thrilled with the Commissioner's support of public education. 8.04, notice to proceed for Williams Avenue Elementary. You will find the notice to proceed as well as the A1A contract for board approval. Also attached is the architect's letter of recommendation for Kramer and Feldman, the lowest bidder on this project. 8.05, amendment to SHP's architectural agreement. We have established that we needed improvements to our loading dock at the high school and the cafeteria kitchen, and they were not included in our original scope of work for the high school. Because we have asked for those additional services and they are included in the scope that will be bid later this month, we need to modify our architect's agreement to include them. The additional cost to the district for the architect changes is $25,250. And finally, 8.06, then and now purchases. There's a few then and now purchase orders for the board to approve at next week's meeting.
All right, any discussion on any of those items from any of the members? I will say that, being off $10,000 on a $30 million budget, I mean, that's pretty good.
Thank you. I got 6 more months to go.
So even if it was $20,000, he was at another $10,000 in the second 6 months. That's still really, really good.
Thank you.
All right. And I believe that's the last item on the agenda. I don't believe we have a superintendent report for the committee meeting.
Actually, we do, President Atwood, if you don't mind.
No, I don't mind at all.
It's a short one, but just since the board's going to be approving all the construction projects that the treasurer just talked about, there's going to be a lot of moves associated with the construction this spring that I really would like to go over with the board.
Sure.
So I have 2 quick slides here to go over with everyone. Construction of the school-based health center continues. And although I learned today it may well be early March instead of February with the health center because, of course, we had some electrical construction delays. Then just to remind everyone, Norwood View is going to move back into their renovated building, hopefully in June, which then will allow space for Williams to move into the middle school in July or August. Also, the administrative offices are going to be moving either to maybe some to the high school and maybe a couple of empty rooms at Sharpsburg, depending on where Mr. Peter is able to find for all of us. Then, also the high school renovation will continue this summer. This is year 2 of the renovation because there's really nowhere to move the high school. It's too large. Then I do want to remind everyone about our sixth grade going to the middle school. The Norwood View youngsters are already there. Williams is moving over, and Sharpsburg will join them. So we have a planning team of sixth grade teachers and the administrators that we're saying dream big. What would a great sixth grade program look like? Let's talk about opportunities we can have since they're in the middle school building. They could start orchestra at sixth grade and band. So we will continue to plan with that team to have a smooth transition. And we also have created a transition team for the Williams move. Last year, the Norwood View team did a great job. It was smooth. It was a very smooth transition and move. And I have no doubt that it also will be with Williams. And we have a team ready to go, meeting with the architect, then figuring out the logistics to make that go smoothly. So there's just a lot happening this spring and summer besides COVID. And I just wanted everyone to be up to date and know what's happening.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Superintendent Ronan? Nope. With that, I would like to make a motion to adjourn from our committee meeting.
Second.
All right. Just a reminder, we do have one more meeting following this, so everybody stay tuned. Mrs. Camphouse, please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Cole,
Yes.
Miss Ballard,
Yes.
Mrs. Rayburn,
Yes.
Mrs. Rarick.
Yes.
All right. With that, we are adjourned at 6:42 from the committee meeting. And I would like to welcome everybody to our special board meeting for January 12th, 2021, and call this meeting to order. The Norwood City School District Board of Education follows a bi-monthly meeting schedule. The first meeting of the month is called our committee meeting. At this meeting, we discuss fully our agenda for the board meeting to be held the third Thursday of each month. As board members, we encourage you to attend, watch, and listen to our committee discussion, which results in action at the board meetings. For full disclosure, our committee meetings and board meetings are always announced, video and audio taped, as well as posted to our webpage for your view. All of our meetings are public, and visitors and comments are welcome. Mrs. Camphouse, please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood,
Present.
Mrs. Cole,
Present.
Miss Ballard,
Present.
Mrs. Rayburn,
Present.
Mrs. Rarick.
Present.
And for the final time tonight, I'd like to everybody please participate in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America
and
and to the republic
for which it stands, one
a
nation,
nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and I would like to make a motion that we adopt the agenda as written.
I'll second.
Any discussion on the agenda? Mrs. Camphouse, please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Cole,
Yes.
Miss Ballard,
Yes.
Mrs. Rayburn,
Yes.
and Mrs. Rarick.
Yes.
All right, item number 2 on our agenda is the Finance Committee report, and I'll turn this over to Mrs. Camphouse.
Thank you, Mr. President. 2.01 resolution in support of incurring up to $11 million of debt to finance permanent improvements. This is the final resolution for our debt to finish the construction project. And it details what revenue we will use to pay that debt obligation and that our revenues are sufficient to cover that debt. After your approval of this resolution, I will forward it to ODE and hope to have their final approval of this debt issuance later this week.
All right, so I would like to make a motion that we approve and adopt the resolution as written.
I'll second.
All right, as we get into the discussion, I just want to say one quick thing. Back in 2016, when this entire process was started by the passing of the permanent improvement bond by the voters. This project was intentionally done short of the actual goal needed to renovate all the buildings. And so everybody went into this at that point in time knowing that that more funds would need to be found at some point in the future in order to finish the high school. So here we are at the end of this journey, and we've done some tightening of the belt with our construction to try and make this number as low as possible. And when you're talking about 5 years after the fact, the cost of inflation, keeping this number down to what it is, I mean, it's a testament to the management of this project. Because we made some massive hurdles to overcome, like the abatement in the middle school in the very beginning, the cost of putting in all the elevators in the buildings in the district, right? So these are some major hurdles to try and keep this number as small as possible. So I just wanted to make that statement out there for everybody to know, like, this wasn't something unforeseen. This is something that was known all the way back in 2016, that the board at some point in time was going to have to cross this bridge, and here we are. Any other discussion? Mrs. Camphouse, please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Cole,
Yes.
Miss Ballard,
Yes.
Mrs. Rayber,
Yes.
Mrs. Rare.
Yes.
With that, the resolution is passed. Item number 3 on our agenda is to enter into an executive session. There are 3 items that we'll be entering in for, and in accordance with ORC 121.22G1, the appointment, employment, dismissal, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official, or the investigation of charges or complaints against a public employee, official, licensee, or regulated individual. Also, in accordance with ORC 121.22G2, the purchase of property for public purposes or the sale of property at competitive bidding. And then finally, in accordance with ORC 121.22G8.1, information directly related to the request for economic development assistance that is to be provided or administered under the statute set forth in ORC 121.22G8.1, or involves public infrastructure improvements or the extension of utility services that are directly related to an economic development project. I would like to make a motion that we enter into executive session.
I'll second.
Any discussion on this? Mrs. Camphouse, please call the roll.
Mr. Atwood,
Yes.
Mrs. Cole,
Yes.
Miss Ballard,
Yes.
Mrs. Rayber,
Yes.
Mrs. Rare.
Yes.
It is 6:49.